The dangerous side of desire. Every man must know this. There are things nobody tells you when you're growing up. Nobody sits you down and says, "Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you could save your life, your peace, your future, and everything you've worked so hard to build." Nobody warns you about the quiet destruction that begins not with a bang, but with a feeling, a warm, intoxicating, almost sacred feeling that starts somewhere deep in your chest and spreads through your entire body like fire moving through dry grass. That feeling has a name. Most people call it desire. And desire, my friend, is one of the most powerful forces on this planet, more powerful than ambition, more persuasive than wisdom, and more dangerous than any enemy you will ever face in the open. Welcome. If you are here, reading this right now, I want you to know that this is not an accident. Something brought you to this moment, maybe curiosity, maybe pain, maybe a quiet voice inside you that has been whispering for months, telling you that something is wrong, that something in your life is slowly pulling you away from the man you were meant to be. Whatever brought you here, I am glad you came. Because what we are about to explore together is not just information. It is a mirror. And when you look into this mirror honestly, you will see things about yourself, about your relationships, about your choices, and about your future that will shake you, humble you, and ultimately set you free. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something important. I need you to think about the last time desire made you do something you later regretted. Maybe it was a decision you made too quickly. Maybe it was a person you trusted too soon. Maybe it was a moment of weakness that cost you your dignity, your money, your relationship, or your reputation. Maybe you are still carrying the weight of that moment right now, still trying to understand how a man as intelligent and capable as you could have fallen so completely into something that hurt you so deeply. If any of this resonates with you, then I need you to stay with me. Because this conversation was made for you. Desire is not evil. I want to make that absolutely clear from the very beginning, because this is not a conversation designed to shame you or make you feel weak for being human. Desire is natural. It is woven into the very fabric of who you are as a man. It drives you to build, to create, to connect, to pursue, and to love. Without desire, there would be no civilization, no art, no music, no family, no progress. Desire is the engine of human achievement. But like any engine, if it is not properly understood and controlled, it does not just stop working, it explodes. And the explosion of unmanaged desire has destroyed more men than war, more men than poverty, and more men than any disease ever documented in human history. Think about the men you have watched fall. Think about the leaders who lost everything because of a secret. Think about the fathers who abandoned their families for a feeling. Think about the brilliant young men you grew up with who had every opportunity in the world, every gift, every advantage, and yet somehow ended up broken, bitter, alone, or worse. In almost every single one of those stories, if you peel back the layers and look at what truly began the collapse, you will find desire at the root. Not weakness. Not stupidity. Not bad luck. Desire, unexamined, unmanaged, misunderstood desire. And that is why we are here today. That is why this channel exists. Because somebody has to say what nobody else is saying. Somebody has to be willing to go to the uncomfortable places, to ask the hard questions, to tell you the truth even when the truth is difficult to hear. And I believe, with everything in me, that the men who are willing to face this truth, the men who are willing to look at the dangerous side of desire with open eyes and honest hearts, those are the men who will build lives worth living. Those are the men who will have relationships worth keeping. Those are the men whose children will grow up proud of who their father was. So if this is your first time on this channel, I want to welcome you with everything I have. This is a place built for men who are serious about growth, serious about truth, and serious about becoming the best version of themselves. Please take a moment right now to subscribe to this YouTube channel, because every single week we go deep into the conversations that matter most for men in this generation. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you never miss a single video, share this with every man in your life who you believe deserves to hear truth, and keep coming back, because what we are building here together is something rare, something real, and something that has the power to change your life forever. Now let us begin. The illusion of control. One of the first and most dangerous lies that desire tells every man is this, that you are in control. It whispers to you softly, almost tenderly, assuring you that you know exactly what you are doing, that you can stop whenever you want, that you are simply enjoying yourself, that you are a grown man making conscious choices, and that nothing is out of hand. This whisper is one of the most convincing and most deadly things you will ever hear, because it comes from inside your own mind. It does not come from an enemy outside you. It comes from a part of you that has been slowly, quietly, and methodically compromised by the very desire it is claiming to manage. The illusion of control is not unique to any one kind of desire. It appears in every form, in the man who believes he can casually maintain relationships with multiple women without anyone getting hurt, including himself. It appears in the man who tells himself he watches certain content online purely for entertainment, unaware that his brain's reward system is being rewired with every single session. It appears in the man who pursues money or status or power with such intensity that he tells himself his family understands, that he will make up for lost time later, that his children will thank him one day, while those children grow up in a home full of material comfort and emotional absence. The illusion of control says, "I've got this." And for a while, it even looks true from the outside. But here is what is actually happening beneath the surface. When desire is activated in the human brain, it triggers a neurochemical cascade that is extraordinarily similar to what happens during drug addiction. Dopamine floods the reward circuits of the brain, creating a sense of anticipation and pleasure that is so powerful it literally overrides rational thinking. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for judgment, consequence awareness, and long-term planning, becomes less active. The limbic system, the ancient, emotional, survival-oriented part of your brain, takes over. In simple terms, when desire takes control, the smartest part of you goes quiet, and the most primitive part of you starts making decisions. And that primitive part does not care about your reputation. It does not care about your family. It does not care about what you said you believed or what kind of man you promised yourself you would be. It only cares about one thing, satisfying the craving, right now, at any cost. This is not a moral judgment. This is neuroscience. This is biology. This is the truth of what is happening inside every man who has ever made a decision in the heat of desire and woken up the next morning wondering how on earth he got there. You were not weak. You were not stupid. You were human. But being human is not an excuse to remain unaware. Because awareness is power. And once you understand that the illusion of control is the first weapon desire uses against you, you can begin to build the kind of genuine self-mastery that does not just resist temptation in the moment, but transforms your entire relationship with desire from the inside out. The men who have truly mastered this are not the men who feel no desire. They feel it deeply, powerfully, completely, just like every other man. The difference is that they have learned to recognize the illusion for what it is. When that warm, compelling, almost irresistible feeling begins to rise in them, they do not immediately follow it. They pause. They breathe. They ask themselves the question that separates the man who builds from the man who destroys. If I follow this feeling to its natural conclusion, what am I actually choosing? That single question, asked honestly and answered truthfully, has saved more men from catastrophe than any amount of willpower ever could. Because willpower is a muscle that gets tired. Awareness is a skill that only gets stronger. The illusion of control is maintained by one thing above all others: speed. Desire works fast, because it knows that if it gives you time to think, you might choose differently. This is why the most dangerous moments are always the ones that feel urgent. The situation that seems to demand an immediate response. The opportunity that feels like it will disappear if you do not act right now. The feeling that is so intense, and so present that waiting even a few minutes seems impossible. Every single time you feel that urgency, I want you to train yourself to recognize it as a signal, not a signal to move faster, but a signal to slow down. Because genuine goodness, genuine opportunity, and genuine love are never destroyed by a pause. Only manipulation and desire-driven chaos require you to act before you think. when attraction becomes obsession. There is a line that every man crosses at some point in his life, and most men do not realize they have crossed it until they are already deep on the other side. It is the line between attraction and obsession. And the crossing of that line is one of the most quietly devastating transitions a man can experience, because it does not feel like falling. It feels like flying. It feels like finally being alive. It feels, in the most genuine and overwhelming sense of the word, like love. And that is precisely what makes it so dangerous. Attraction is healthy. Attraction is natural. Attraction is the spark that starts connection, that makes you want to know someone better, that makes the world feel more vivid and full of possibility. When you are attracted to someone, your attention is drawn toward them, your energy rises in their presence, and you find yourself wanting to understand them, to impress them, to spend time with them. This is beautiful. This is human. This is part of what makes life worth living. But attraction becomes obsession when the object of your desire stops being a real person and starts being a projection, a screen onto which you have unconsciously cast every hope, every fantasy, every unfulfilled need, and every dream you have ever carried. When attraction becomes obsession, the real person in front of you becomes almost invisible. You are no longer responding to who they actually are. You are responding to who you have decided they are, who you need them to be, who your desire has constructed them to be. You overlook their flaws not because you have considered them and found them acceptable, but because you literally cannot see them clearly. Your brain, flooded with dopamine and norepinephrine, is filtering reality in the most favorable direction possible, highlighting everything that confirms your desire and dismissing everything that contradicts it. This is not love. This is a neurological event. And it is extraordinarily convincing. The danger of this stage is enormous. Men in the grip of obsessive attraction make decisions that they would never make in a clear-headed state. They move too fast, emotionally, physically, financially. They share too much too soon, making themselves vulnerable before they have any real evidence that this person is trustworthy. They restructure their entire lives around someone they barely know, canceling plans, neglecting friendships, ignoring work, and sometimes cutting off family, all in service of a feeling that they have misidentified as destiny. They become, in a very real sense, addicted to a person in the same way that a person can become addicted to a substance. And just like any addiction, the high cannot be sustained. Reality eventually breaks through. And when it does, the crash is devastating. I have spoken with men who lost businesses because they were so consumed with pursuing a woman that they could not focus on anything else for months. I have spoken with men who ended strong, loving relationships because they became obsessed with someone new who turned out to be nothing like what they imagined. I have spoken with men who spent fortunes, money they had saved for years, trying to maintain the attention of someone whose interest in them was never genuine. And in every single one of these stories, the man involved was not foolish. He was not weak. He was simply human, in the grip of one of the most powerful neurological experiences that a human being can have, without the understanding or the tools to navigate it safely. What does the navigation look like? It begins with a commitment to seeing clearly, even when clarity is painful. It means asking the hard question. Am I attracted to this person, or am I attracted to the idea of this person? It means slowing down the pace of investment, emotional, financial, and physical, until your brain has had enough time and enough experience with this person to actually evaluate them accurately rather than ideally. It means maintaining your existing life, your existing commitments, and your existing sense of self throughout the process of getting to know someone, rather than dismantling everything you have built in pursuit of a feeling. And it means being honest enough with yourself to recognize the difference between the warmth of genuine connection and the heat of obsessive desire, because they feel similar in the beginning, but they lead to very different places in the end. The man who loses himself. Perhaps the most painful and least discussed consequence of unmanaged desire is this: the gradual, quiet disappearance of the man himself. Not his body. Not his reputation. Not even necessarily his relationships, though those often go too. What disappears is something harder to name, and harder to recover than any of those things. What disappears is his sense of who he is, his values, his standards, his boundaries, his voice, his vision for his own life. All of it slowly replaced by an identity built entirely around the object of his desire, whether that object is a person, a lifestyle, a substance, or a status. This process is so gradual that most men do not notice it happening. It begins with small compromises, things that seem completely reasonable in the moment. You stop doing certain things that used to matter to you because they feel less exciting now. You start doing certain things you said you would never do because the situation seemed to justify it. You find yourself saying things you do not believe, agreeing with things you do not respect, tolerating things you would have once found unacceptable, all because the desire to maintain access to what you want is stronger, in that moment, than your commitment to being who you actually are. Every single one of those small compromises is a transaction. And in that transaction, you are trading a small piece of yourself for continued access to your desire. The problem is that the trades compound. One small compromise makes the next one easier. Each abandoned standard lowers the floor slightly for what you are willing to accept and who you are willing to become. And over months or years of this process, a man can look in the mirror and barely recognize himself, not because he looks different on the outside, but because the person looking back at him no longer holds the values, the convictions, or the sense of purpose that once defined him. This is one of the most important things I can tell any man, and I want you to hold it carefully and seriously. Your identity is not just precious because it makes you feel good. Your identity is the foundation upon which every good thing in your life is built. Your integrity is what makes your word mean something. Your values are what make your relationships trustworthy. Your standards are what protect you from the people and situations that would destroy you. When you lose yourself to desire, you do not just lose a feeling of self-respect. You lose the very architecture that makes a good life possible. And rebuilding that architecture, finding your way back to yourself after years of slow self-abandonment, is one of the hardest and most important journeys a man can undertake. The man who keeps himself through desire, who remains rooted in who he is even as he pursues what he wants, is not a man who feels less. He feels everything just as deeply. But he has learned that who he is matters more than what he wants. And that lesson, truly learned and truly lived, changes everything. The trap of validation seeking. One of the ways that desire manifests most destructively in a man's life is through the endless, exhausting, soul-draining pursuit of external validation. This is a topic that makes many men uncomfortable because it touches something deeply vulnerable. The part of every man that wonders, sometimes in the quiet hours of the night, whether he is truly enough, whether he is truly seen, whether the people he loves and respects actually value him as much as he needs to be valued. And that vulnerability, unacknowledged and unhealed, becomes a hunger that drives behavior in ways that most men would be ashamed to fully examine. Validation seeking in men takes many forms. Sometimes it looks like the relentless pursuit of sexual conquest, not because the man is genuinely connected to or interested in the women he pursues, but because each new conquest provides a temporary hit of confirmation that he is desirable, powerful, and worthy. Sometimes it looks like obsessive social media performance, curating an image of success, happiness, and attractiveness that may bear little resemblance to the actual quality of his inner life. Sometimes it looks like the compulsive need to be seen as strong, capable, and in control at all times, never asking for help, never admitting weakness, never allowing anyone close enough to see the places where he is uncertain or afraid. All of these behaviors have one thing in common: they are attempts to fill an internal void with external input. And the tragic irony of this approach is that it cannot work. Not because the validation is not real or not genuinely offered, but because no amount of external confirmation can heal an internal wound. You can be admired by thousands and still feel completely empty. You can be desired by many and still feel profoundly alone. You can be praised constantly and still carry inside yourself a quiet, persistent sense of inadequacy that no amount of external success can touch. Because the wound that drives validation seeking is not a wound that lives in the world outside you. It lives inside you. And it can only be healed from the inside. The man who understands this, who truly, deeply understands that his worth is not determined by who desires him, or who approves of him, or who applauds him, is a man who has broken one of the most powerful chains that desire uses to control men. Because when you no longer need validation from the outside, you are free to make choices based on your actual values rather than your emotional hunger. You are free to walk away from situations that compromise you, even when they offer the validation you used to crave. You are free to be honest, even when honesty is not rewarded. You are free, in the most fundamental sense of the word, and that freedom is the foundation of genuine masculine strength. Desire, and the destruction of discipline. Ask any man who has achieved something genuinely significant in his life what the single most important factor was in his success, and the answer, in almost every case, will come down to some version of the same thing: discipline. The ability to do what needs to be done, consistently, regardless of how he feels in any given moment. The ability to delay gratification, to endure discomfort, to stay focused on the long-term vision even when short-term temptations are screaming for attention. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not exciting. It does not generate dopamine the way that desire does. But it is the mechanism through which dreams become reality, through which character is built, through which a life of genuine meaning and lasting satisfaction is constructed. And desire, in its unmanaged form, is the single greatest enemy of discipline that exists. Not because desire is evil, but because desire and discipline operate on completely different time horizons. Desire is about now. It is about this moment, this feeling, this immediate experience of pleasure or excitement or connection. Discipline is about later. It is about the person you are becoming, the life you are building, the future that your present choices are either creating or preventing. When desire and discipline are in conflict, and they are in conflict constantly, every single day, in the life of every man who is trying to build something meaningful, the outcome of that conflict determines everything. The man who has not examined and understood his desires does not actually get to choose which one wins. He thinks he is choosing. He believes he is making a decision. But in reality, he is simply following whichever force is stronger in that moment, and because desire is loud, immediate, and neurochemically compelling, while discipline is quiet, future-oriented, and requires conscious effort, desire wins far more often than it should. Not because the man is lazy or immoral, but because he has never understood the nature of the battle he is in. Understanding the battle changes everything. When you know that desire speaks loudly and discipline speaks quietly, you can make accommodations for that reality. You can build structures and systems in your life that make disciplined behavior easier and desire-driven behavior harder. You can cultivate relationships with men who hold you accountable. You can create environments that support the person you are trying to become rather than the impulses you are trying to manage. You can develop practices, physical, mental, and spiritual, that build your capacity for self-regulation over time, so that the next time desire rises, you meet it not with white-knuckled willpower, but with the calm, grounded strength of a man who knows himself and trusts himself completely. The women who will test you. I need to speak directly and honestly about something now, and I want to do it with the full respect that this topic deserves for everyone involved. There are women in this world who, for a variety of reasons, some rooted in their own wounds, some in conscious strategy, and some in simply being who they naturally are, will test the boundaries of your desire in ways that are extraordinarily powerful and in some cases genuinely dangerous. This is not a statement about women in general. The vast majority of women are good, genuine, and navigating this world with just as much complexity and pain as men are. But honesty requires acknowledging that not everyone who activates your desire has your best interests at heart. And the inability to discern the difference between genuine connection and calculated manipulation is one of the most costly blind spots a man can carry. The first kind of woman who will test you is the one who is genuinely wonderful, warm, beautiful, intelligent, and compelling in every way, but who is fundamentally incompatible with the life you are trying to build. She is not manipulative. She is not unkind. She may genuinely care for you. But the life she wants, the values she holds, the direction she is moving, none of it aligns with yours in the ways that matter for a long-term relationship to thrive. Your desire for her is real. Your enjoyment of her presence is genuine. But if you follow that desire without honestly examining the compatibility question, you will find yourself years down the road in a relationship that slowly consumes the life you were meant to be living, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because desire alone is not a sufficient foundation for a life built together. The second kind of woman who will test you is the one who has learned, consciously or unconsciously, that her physical attractiveness and sexual availability can be used as leverage to get what she wants from men. This woman is not a monster. She is often someone who has been deeply wounded, who learned early in her life that her body was her most valuable currency, and that men would trade almost anything for access to it. Her behavior comes from a place of pain, not malice. But that context, as important as it is for compassion and understanding, does not protect you from the very real damage that engaging with this dynamic can cause. Men who become entangled with this kind of dynamic often find themselves emotionally depleted, financially compromised, and spiritually confused, giving and giving and giving to a relationship that takes everything and returns very little of genuine substance. The third kind of woman who will test you is perhaps the most dangerous of all, the woman who is genuinely toxic, who knows exactly what she is doing, and who derives something from the power she has over men. She is a master of the push and pull, intense connection followed by cold withdrawal, deep intimacy followed by confusing distance, warmth and tenderness followed by cutting criticism or sudden absence. This cycle activates the most addictive neurological patterns in the male brain, the intermittent reinforcement that makes slot machines compelling and abusive relationships feel like love. A man caught in this cycle is not weak. He is neurologically and emotionally captured. And escaping it requires not just willpower, but genuine understanding of what is happening, genuine support from others, and genuine commitment to his own healing. How do you protect yourself from all of this? Not by becoming cynical about women. Not by building walls around your heart. Not by refusing to be vulnerable, or open, or genuinely present in your relationships. You protect yourself by doing the deep, honest work of knowing yourself, your wounds, your patterns, your triggers, and your needs, before you enter any significant relationship. You protect yourself by slowing down. By paying attention to consistency over time rather than intensity in the moment. By listening to what someone's actions tell you rather than what their words or their beauty suggest. And by maintaining, always, the non-negotiable commitment to your own values, your own standards, and your own sense of who you are, because a man who knows himself is extraordinarily difficult to manipulate. The cost of chasing status through women. There is a particular kind of desire that operates in many men largely beneath the level of conscious awareness, and it is one that causes tremendous damage, not just to the men themselves, but to the women involved and to the broader culture in which we all live. It is the desire to use women as status symbols. To pursue certain women not primarily because of genuine connection or authentic attraction, but because having them, being seen with them, being chosen by them, being able to say that you had them, confers a kind of social currency that feeds the ego and signals something to other men about your value, your power, and your desirability. This pattern is so deeply embedded in certain masculine cultures that many men who engage in it have genuinely never questioned it. It simply feels like normal behavior, like something men do, like a game that everyone understands and everyone is playing. But when you examine it honestly, what you find is something deeply troubling. You find men who are using other human beings as props in a performance designed not for genuine fulfillment, but for ego gratification. You find relationships that are fundamentally dishonest at their core, because the man's primary motivation was never connection, it was display. You find a cycle of pursuit, conquest, loss of interest, and renewed pursuit that leaves a trail of confused and hurt people in its wake, and that ultimately leaves the man himself emptier with each cycle, requiring a higher and higher stimulus to generate the same hit of validation. The cost to the man who lives this way is profound and cumulative. Each relationship entered for the wrong reasons is a relationship that cannot provide what a man actually needs: genuine intimacy, genuine respect, genuine partnership, genuine growth. Each conquest that is used primarily for ego validation deepens the habit of viewing relationships transactionally, making genuine connection progressively harder to achieve and maintain. Over time, the man who has pursued this path often finds himself surrounded by a history of encounters but genuinely alone, unable to trust, unable to be vulnerable, unable to receive or give the kind of love that actually satisfies the deepest human hunger for belonging. And the tragedy is that this deepest hunger, the hunger for genuine belonging, for being truly known and truly loved, is present in every man who has ever chased status through women. It is the very thing that the chasing was trying, in its distorted way, to satisfy. But because the method could never produce the result, the hunger was never actually fed, only momentarily distracted. And a man who has spent years distracting himself from his deepest needs rather than honestly addressing them has a very difficult journey ahead of him. Not impossible, never impossible, but difficult. And difficult is always better faced sooner rather than later. Pornography and the rewiring of the male brain. There is perhaps no topic in this entire conversation that is more urgent, more widely relevant, and more consistently avoided in the conversations that men have with each other than the topic of pornography and its effects on the male brain, male desire, and male relationships. And because I am committed to telling you the truth, we are going to go there fully and honestly, not with shame, not with judgment, but with the clear-eyed, compassionate understanding that every man deserves. Pornography consumption among men has reached levels that have no precedent in human history. The accessibility, the variety, and the sheer volume of sexually explicit content now available to any man with a smartphone represents a neurological challenge that the human brain was never designed to handle. And the science on what prolonged pornography consumption does to the male brain is increasingly clear, increasingly alarming, and increasingly relevant to understanding why so many men today struggle with desire, relationships, intimacy, and their own sense of identity and purpose. The brain adapts to whatever stimuli it is repeatedly exposed to. This is the fundamental principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself in response to experience. When a man repeatedly exposes himself to pornographic content, several things begin to happen in his brain over time. The dopamine receptors associated with the reward system begin to downregulate, meaning that the same level of stimulus produces less pleasure over time, driving the person to seek more intense, more extreme, or more novel content to generate the same neurological response. This is the same mechanism that drives tolerance in addiction, and it operates in identical ways. Simultaneously, the man's brain begins to calibrate its expectations for arousal around the highly artificial, highly stimulating content he is consuming. Real women, in real relationships, with real emotional complexity and real physical variation, begin to seem less compelling by comparison, not because they are less desirable in any objective sense, but because the brain's reward system has been recalibrated to respond primarily to the kind of hyperstimulating, endlessly novel content that pornography provides. This is one of the primary reasons why so many men who consume pornography heavily find themselves experiencing difficulty with arousal or satisfaction in real sexual encounters. Their brain has been trained to respond to a stimulus that real life cannot provide. The psychological effects compound the neurological ones. Men who consume pornography heavily often develop deeply distorted beliefs about sex, about women, and about what constitutes normal or desirable sexual behavior. They may develop unrealistic expectations about their partner's bodies, responses, and willingness to engage in certain behaviors. They may find themselves less emotionally present and less genuinely connected during intimate encounters, more focused on performance and physical mechanics than on genuine human connection. They may experience increasing difficulty being genuinely present and emotionally vulnerable with a partner, because pornography offers a form of sexual experience that requires nothing, no vulnerability, no communication, no emotional risk, no genuine investment in another person's experience. And perhaps most painfully, many men who have been consuming pornography for years carry a deep, unnamed sense of shame about it, a sense that this private habit reveals something broken or dirty about them, something that would horrify the people who love them if they knew. That shame is not productive. It does not help anyone heal. But the habit itself, clearly examined and honestly understood, is something that every man who is serious about his own well-being, his relationships, and his future deserves to look at with open eyes. Recovery is possible. Complete, genuine, profound recovery is possible. Men who have broken the hold that pornography had on their lives describe the experience as one of the most transformative and liberating things they have ever done. Like waking up from a fog they did not know they were in. Like reconnecting with a sense of aliveness and genuine desire and emotional presence that they had forgotten was possible. The path is not easy. But nothing worth having ever is. The spiritual emptiness that desire cannot fill. There is a dimension to this conversation that goes beyond psychology, beyond neuroscience, and beyond social dynamics, a dimension that many modern conversations about desire deliberately avoid, because it touches something that our culture has largely lost the language for. It is the spiritual dimension. And I believe that no honest conversation about the dangerous side of desire can be complete without it. Every major wisdom tradition in human history, from the ancient philosophers to the world's great religious teachings to the indigenous elders of every culture, has said essentially the same thing about desire, that it is a river that flows from a spring much deeper than the body, or even the mind. That beneath the surface desires for pleasure, for connection, for status, and for validation, there is a deeper hunger, a hunger for meaning, for transcendence, for connection to something larger than the self. And that when this deeper hunger is ignored, unfaced, and unaddressed, it does not go away. It transforms. It disguises itself as all the surface desires that we have been discussing throughout this conversation, driving men to pursue pleasure, connection, and validation with an urgency and intensity that no amount of pleasure, connection, or validation can ever fully satisfy, because they were never what was actually being sought. The man who has everything the world tells him should make him happy, success, money, a beautiful partner, social recognition, physical pleasure and abundance, and who still wakes up in the quiet moments of the night with a sense of profound emptiness and inexplicable longing, is not broken. He is not ungrateful. He is not weak. He is hungry in the deepest way a human being can be hungry, spiritually hungry. And no amount of external achievement or sensory pleasure will ever feed that hunger. Only a genuine encounter with purpose, with truth, with transcendence, and with something worth giving his life to can feed it. This is not a call to any particular religion or spiritual practice. It is a call to honesty, the kind of radical, courageous honesty that allows a man to sit in the quiet and ask himself the question that desire most desperately wants to drown out. What am I actually looking for? Not what do I want right now? Not what would feel good this moment. But what am I actually looking for in the deepest, truest part of who I am? What would make this life feel genuinely meaningful? What am I here for? Who am I meant to be? What am I meant to build? What am I meant to give? The man who finds honest answers to these questions, and lives by them, even when the answers require sacrifice, even when they require walking away from things that feel good but lead nowhere, even when they require the kind of sustained discipline and commitment that desire constantly argues against, that man is free. Not free from desire, but free from the tyranny of desire. And that freedom is one of the most extraordinary things a human being can experience. Healing the wounds that drive desire. We cannot talk honestly about the dangerous side of desire without talking about wounds. Because in the overwhelming majority of cases, what drives a man's desire into destructive territory is not simply biology or moral failure. It is pain. Old pain, often carried for decades. Pain that was never named, never acknowledged, never properly processed. Pain from childhood that taught certain lessons about love and worth and safety that were never true but that the child had no way of knowing were not true. Pain from rejection, from abandonment, from betrayal, from the experience of being seen as valuable only for what you could provide rather than for who you actually were. These wounds do not disappear when men grow up. They go underground. They become invisible, running as background programs that influence behavior in ways the man himself often cannot explain. The man who grew up without a present, engaged father and who now pursues women relentlessly, he is, in part, searching for the affirmation that his father never gave him. The man who was repeatedly criticized and humiliated in childhood and who now pursues status with desperate intensity. He is, in part, trying to prove to the child he once was that he is finally enough. The man who experienced betrayal in a significant relationship and who now maintains emotional walls that prevent genuine intimacy. He is, in part, still protecting the person who was hurt from being hurt in that way again. None of this is weakness. None of this is something to be ashamed of. It is the deeply human reality of what happens when pain is not addressed. It shapes us, often in ways that compound the original pain rather than healing it. And the path forward is not to pretend the wounds do not exist, or to be angry at yourself for being affected by them, or to simply try harder to behave differently without understanding why the behavior arose in the first place. The path forward is the same path that every genuine healing requires: truth, time, support, and the courage to feel what was never allowed to be felt. This might mean therapy. For many men, genuine psychotherapy with a skilled therapist has been one of the most important and transformative investments they have ever made, not because they were broken, but because they deserved more than carrying pain alone for the rest of their lives. It might mean honest conversation with a trusted friend, a mentor, or a community of men who are doing this same work. It might mean journaling, prayer, meditation, or any other practice that creates space for genuine self-examination and emotional processing. What it requires, above all, is the willingness to be honest with yourself, about yourself, in a way that is both compassionate and clear. The man who has done his healing work is a different kind of man. His desire still moves in him, powerfully, beautifully, humanly. But it is no longer driven by fear or pain or the desperate hunger of unhealed wounds. It is desire in service of genuine values. Desire in service of genuine love. Desire in service of the life he has chosen to build with clear eyes and an honest heart. And that kind of desire, rooted, grounded, purposeful, is not dangerous. It is one of the most creative and beautiful forces in human experience. The brotherhood you need. One of the things that makes this journey so difficult for so many men is that they are trying to walk it alone. And walking this particular path alone is not just difficult, it is, in many cases, nearly impossible. Not because men are incapable of individual insight or individual growth, but because certain things can only be seen in the mirror of other people. Certain truths can only be spoken in the safety of genuine trust. Certain patterns can only be broken in the context of genuine accountability. And certain healing can only happen in the experience of genuine belonging. Men were not designed to be isolated. This is not a social preference. It is a biological and psychological reality. The male brain is deeply responsive to social belonging, to the sense of being part of something, to the experience of being known and valued within a community. When men lack this, when they are genuinely isolated, as so many men in the modern world are, they become more vulnerable to all of the desire-driven patterns we have been discussing. Isolation increases the power of every craving, because there is no anchor of relationship, no accountability of community, no voice of a trusted friend to offer perspective when the inner voice of desire is speaking loudest. The solution is not to become dependent on others or to outsource your self-regulation to a group. The solution is to build genuine, honest, accountable friendships with men who share your values and your commitment to growth. Men who will tell you the truth when you are fooling yourself. Men who will celebrate your victories and hold space for your struggles. Men who are doing their own work with the same seriousness and integrity that you are doing yours. This kind of brotherhood is rare in modern culture. But it is not impossible to find or to build. And for the man who finds it, it is one of the most powerful resources available in the entire journey of becoming who he was meant to be. If you are watching this channel, you are already part of something. This community. Every man who watches these videos, who engages with these ideas, who is willing to sit with the uncomfortable questions and pursue the honest answers, is a community of men committed to truth and growth. And I want to invite you, right now, to take that community seriously. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a conversation. Share these ideas with the men in your life who need them. Engage in the comments with genuine honesty and genuine encouragement. Because together, we are building something that none of us could build alone. Redefining strength. Everything we have discussed in this conversation points toward a redefinition of strength that is desperately needed in the lives of men today. The cultural definition of masculine strength, hard, unfeeling, stoic, dominant, in control of everything and vulnerable to nothing, is not only false, it is actively destructive. It teaches men to suppress the very capacities that make genuine strength possible: emotional awareness, honest self-examination, the courage to be vulnerable, the willingness to seek help and accept guidance, the ability to feel deeply and to let that feeling inform rather than dictate behavior. Real strength is not the absence of feeling. Real strength is the capacity to feel fully while remaining grounded in your values. Real strength is not the absence of desire. Real strength is desire that serves your deepest purposes rather than consuming them. Real strength is not the refusal to be hurt. Real strength is the courage to be open to connection, knowing that vulnerability is the price of genuine intimacy, and that genuine intimacy is worth the price. The strongest man in any room is not the man with the most bravado, the most conquests, or the most external signs of success. The strongest man in any room is the man who knows himself most deeply and honestly, who has faced his wounds, examined his desires, built his character, and committed his life to something genuinely worth living for. That man radiates something that no performance can replicate. It is the quiet, unshakable confidence of a person who does not need the world's approval because he has his own. It is the warmth of a person who does not need to take from others because he has done the work of knowing and meeting his own deepest needs. It is the presence of a person who is genuinely, fully here, not somewhere else in his mind, chasing the next hit of desire, but present, grounded, and free. That is the man I am inviting you to become. Not through perfection, none of us will ever be perfect. Not through the absence of struggle, the struggle is where the growth happens. But through commitment, through honesty, through the willingness to keep showing up, keep looking clearly, keep choosing your values over your impulses, one day at a time, one decision at a time, one honest moment at a time. The relationship you actually deserve. After everything we have discussed, after the warnings and the neuroscience and the examination of wounds and patterns and traps, I want to end this section by painting a picture of what becomes possible on the other side of this work. Because this is not ultimately a story of danger and destruction. It is ultimately a story of possibility. The possibility of the kind of relationship that the vast majority of men deeply want and rarely find: genuine, deep, honest, lasting, life-giving love. The man who does this work does not just avoid the traps of desire. He becomes capable of something that the unexamined man is not. He becomes capable of genuine intimacy. He can be fully present with a partner without needing her to be something other than what she is. He can be honest about his needs without being demanding or manipulative. He can be vulnerable without falling apart. He can hold space for her complexity and her wounds without becoming consumed by them. He can love without losing himself, because he has done the work of knowing himself deeply enough that no relationship can strip that from him. And the woman who finds this man, the woman who encounters a man who truly knows himself, who has genuinely done his work, who is rooted in his values and secure in his identity and capable of genuine, present, honest love, she knows immediately that something is different. Not perfect. Not without challenges. But genuinely different. Genuinely rare. Genuinely worth investing in. This is the relationship that both of you deserve. This is the relationship that becomes possible on the other side of this work. Subscribe to this channel right now if you are serious about becoming this man. Share this with someone who needs it. Come back for more, because this is just the beginning of a conversation that has the power to change your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. The journey toward the man you are meant to be starts here, starts now, starts with the simple and courageous act of choosing truth over comfort. You are capable of this. You are worth this. And together, we are going to walk this road all the way to where it leads, to freedom, to purpose, to love, and to the life that was always waiting for you on the other side of your most dangerous desires. Moving forward, the daily practice. Everything we have discussed throughout this conversation is only valuable if it translates into something real, into actual choices, actual habits, and actual daily practices that build the life we have been describing. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. And I want more than entertainment for you. I want transformation. The daily practice of a man who is committed to mastering his desire begins, every single morning, with a moment of genuine intentionality. Before the phone, before the news, before the demands of the day flood in, just a few minutes of honest, quiet self-examination. Who do I want to be today? What are my values? What would a man of genuine integrity and genuine wisdom choose in the situations I am likely to face today? This morning practice is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about beginning each day with your compass pointed toward the man you are trying to become, rather than simply reacting to whatever stimuli the world throws at you. The practice continues with honest examination of where desire has been showing up in your life, and what it has been doing there. Not with shame. Not with harsh self-criticism. But with the clear, compassionate, genuinely curious gaze of a man who wants to understand himself. Where am I seeking validation that I could be generating from within? Where am I making choices driven by desire rather than values? Where am I avoiding uncomfortable truths that I know, on some level, I need to face? These questions, asked regularly and answered honestly, are among the most powerful tools for personal transformation that exist. The practice includes physical discipline, not because physical fitness is the most important thing, but because the body and the mind are not separate, and the discipline cultivated through consistent physical training transfers directly into every other area of life. The man who shows up for his workout when he does not feel like it is practicing the same muscle that will show up for his values when desire is arguing against them. Every physical discipline is a dress rehearsal for the discipline that matters most. The practice includes honest relationship, with a mentor, an accountability partner, a therapist, a community, or some combination of these. Regular, honest conversation with people who know you and care about your growth is not a luxury. For the man who is serious about this work, it is a necessity. And the practice includes gratitude, genuine, specific, daily gratitude for the life you have, the capacity you carry, the opportunities available to you, and the possibility of becoming more. Gratitude is not passive. It is one of the most active and powerful reorienters of the human mind available. A man who practices genuine gratitude is a man who is increasingly able to choose long-term meaning over short-term desire, because he has learned to find genuine satisfaction in what he already has while continuing to grow toward what he is meant to become. This is the life that is available to you. Not someday. Not after you have fixed everything or figured everything out. Now. Today. With exactly the circumstances you have and exactly the man you currently are, wounded and wonderful and genuinely capable of becoming more than you have yet imagined. Subscribe to this channel. Share this with every man you believe deserves this conversation. Come back for more, because we are just getting started, and the best of what we have to say together is still ahead. You belong here. You always did. And together, we are going to build something extraordinary. Stay subscribed. Stay awake. Keep growing. The world needs the man you are becoming.